A demon is a supernatural being that is typically associated with evil and worshipping the devil, and possessing the living is a pretty common way to go about worshipping said devil. Let's take a look at top 5 real demons who have done exactly that. Number 5 on this list is Father Urbain Grandier. Father Urbain Grandier was born in 1590 in France and lived until 1634. He became a priest in the town of Loudun in 1617 and was a priest right up until he was burned at the stake in 1634. That's right guys, Father Urbain Grandier's story takes an ugly turn when he's linked to making some serious deals with the devil. Urbain had some negative rumors start to circulate around him in 1629 when he was being accused of sleeping around with a lot of women. It was even thought that he was the father to a son of a married woman, however that was never 100% proven. The slander surrounding his name reached an all-time high when in 1632 allegations of demonic possession started to form. A group of nuns began having very strange and vivid dreams with Urbain appearing in them. They also started acting very funny and not feeling like themselves. It all started with Mother Superior Jeanne d'Agnes. It's written that, unfortunately for the tortured nun, no amount of penance kept her dreams at bay, and soon the other nuns followed in her footsteps. This plague of nightmares swept its way through all of these nuns, and they all reported having Urbain in their dreams. The nuns started to fling accusations at Father Urbain Grandier and said that he'd gotten a demon to possess them. The demon that most people link to this possession is Asmodeus, who's a prince of demons, a demon that represents lust. That being said, a bunch of other demons were tied to this possession as well. Zabalon, Iskaron, Astaroth, Gresil, Amand, the list goes on and on about the possible demon or demons that Father Urbain Grandier sent down to haunt these nuns. Considering his character was already getting called into question, it wasn't difficult for people to believe that he'd called upon Asmodeus to do his evil bidding. A trial took place following the reports, but the verdict of guilt was swift, and after some extensive torture, Father Urbain Grandier was put to death by being burned at the stake for making dealings with the devil. Number 4 on this list is from a Reddit user called Mary. They tell a very interesting story of how their friend got possessed by a demon in a newly purchased house and the ramifications of that. I think they do a good job telling this story, so for the purposes of this video, I'm going to quote their post. When I was in high school, my friend moved into a farmhouse. That house had a barn and a basement with stairs that led to nowhere. The previous owner killed himself in the barn because, and they put this in quotations here, the resident told me to. When moving into this house, my friend would never step into the barn. Not once would she even walk towards it. We thought it would be fun to have a seance because we were young and stupid. We had the candles and everything. I was sitting next to Katie, the one who lived there, and all of a sudden, when asking if whoever was there could show themselves, Katie then squeezed my hand so hard. The candlelight wavered and she turned her head so slow to meet my eyes. What she said I will never forget. "Let's go to the barn. Someone's there who wants to talk to us." I let go of her hand and stood up. My other friends there turned on the lights and she blinked at us. What happened? To this day, she can't remember that night. A week after our seance, her dad was found in that barn. He shot himself, and in his letter he said, "I'm sorry, I had to listen," as if something had told him to do it. This is a true story. It could have been coincidences back to back, but it will always scare me. So that's a really interesting story, and it reminded me of a tale that we talked about on this channel previously. In Scotland, many centuries ago, the settlers of the area defied a witch by taking over her land and not upholding the bargain that they'd struck with her. They eventually went on to kill her. This caused this witch to haunt the area, and most specifically the barn that was there. Now, we don't know where this place was, and I would find it an overwhelming coincidence if this happened to be the same Scottish barn, but I wouldn't be surprised if a similar story is what caused a demon to haunt this place. Sadly, I couldn't find out exactly who the demon was in the place the Reddit user described, but it's possible that it has been there for hundreds of years, preying on anyone who enters its lair. Number 3 on this list is the demon Dagon. This demon was prevalent in possessing people during what we call now the Louveniers possessions. This was a series of demonic possessions that occurred at the Louveniers convent in 1647. In this instance, 18 separate individuals claimed that they had been possessed by a demon. This all started with 18-year-old sister Madeleine Bavent. She was the first victim of these demonic possessions and was the first one to come forward about her story. Up until that point, her life had been very hard and she was often mistreated growing up. If what she claims was actually true, then that mistreatment carried over into her adulthood as well. Father Thomas Boule was the current leader of the convent and succeeded Father Mathurin Picard for the title. Father Mathurin Picard had died earlier that year. However, it was said that both men were responsible for having demons possess these nuns, with Father Picard's spirit being present during the proceedings. It was reported that these two men took Sister Madeleine Bavent to a witch's sabbat, and when they were there, married her to the devil and had him perform sexual acts with her. This was accompanied by the disembowelment and murder of two other men that were present at this ritual. Madeleine referred to the devil as Dagon and said that that was the name that he had given to himself. After Madeleine came forth, so did a bunch of other nuns as well. The count finally got up to 18 of them who had come forward, and they all told a similar tale. There were also reports of these nuns speaking in tongues, contorting their bodies, and levitating, just as somebody might if they were possessed by a demon. Public exorcisms were held, and the entire town showed up to watch as these nuns were exorcised of the demons that had been forced upon them. Father Thomas Brule was in the thick of it now, and there was nothing to save him from being burnt at the stake. However, it's also interesting to note that Madeleine Bavent was also sent to the dungeons to live out the rest of her days. I'm not really sure the logic behind that decision, considering she was the victim of Father Thomas Brule and also the demon Dagon, but I guess they did things differently back then. Number 2 on this list is the demon Riga. This story comes from another Reddit user. They say that they don't remember any of it, but this happened to them when they were only 2 years old. Apparently one evening this person, when they were only 2, was lying awake in bed and they started screaming at the top of their lungs. Now this isn't completely uncommon for a 2-year-old to do, but what happens next is, I'm going to quote their post here as they say, "I got off the bed and started running in circles while screaming and crying in terror. It was not a nightmare since I was awake, and I was not playing nor demanding anything since I was just scared out of my mind. Nothing like this had ever happened before. I was the only child in the house. This went on for some random time at night and until dawn. It would only stop at dawn. I did this every single night, non-stop, for 6 months." End quote. Now that is definitely a strange thing for a 2-year-old to be doing, and quite demonic if you ask me. The parents knew that this was a big problem. Their child would claw and bite at them whenever they tried to calm him, and they weren't sure how to handle it. Eventually they decided that going to a priest was the right thing to do, but even they couldn't find the answer. They apparently visited as many priests as they could, but still the problem persisted. That was right up until one priest, while performing a ritual on this child, managed to extract some information. It turns out that our Reddit user was possessed by a demon, and that demon's name was Riga. They couldn't get a whole lot more information, however they did learn that Riga was an inhabitant of not only the child, but also the home. The parents understood exactly what this meant, and wasting no time at all, they moved houses. This clearly was the problem, because the second that they got to a new residence, the demonic possession of Riga ceased, and their baby, our Reddit user, was calm. Sometimes these demons will only possess us for a time, and when they get what they want, which in this case was for these people to leave their house, then they'll also leave. Number 1 on this list is the demon Baalberith. This demon was rampant in possessing people in the Aeon province possessions. Similar to some of the other cases that we've looked at today, this pandemic of possessions made its way through a convent of nuns. Clearly, these nuns really had it rough during the early 17th century. The first report to come out came from Madeleine de Demandaux. She was an aristocrat who joined the Ursuline convent at Marseille in 1607. It wasn't long before she'd reported to the Mother Superior that she actually had an affair with Father Louis Goffrey, who was also at that convent. The Mother Superior was obviously shocked at this news and thought it best to remove Madeleine and send her to Aix. This was to get her away from Father Goffrey and distance her from the scandal. It was when she got to her new location though that she started to notice the symptoms of demonic possession. In 1609, Madeleine started to exhibit all of our classic telltale signs. This included convulsions, foaming at the mouth, speaking devilish languages, reacting strangely to religious paraphernalia. These symptoms spread like a disease to all of the other nuns that were close to Madeleine, and similarly to my other entries on this list, you immediately had a bunch of nuns that were now demonically possessed. These nuns were hit hard with these demonic possessions as well, with a lot of them speaking a voice that wasn't their own. The church responded swiftly and started performing exorcisms as best as they could. Most attempts though were unsuccessful. However, it was during one of these exorcisms in 1910 that Father Goffrey's name was thrown into the mix. Madeleine claimed that he seduced her and brought her to a demonic ritual. This ritual was used to summon the demon Baalberith, which then possessed Madeleine. Other nuns started to make the same claim, and soon Father Goffrey's name was completely run through the dirt. During a session of torture, he confessed to the crimes and was sentenced to death. This case of a demon possessing a group of nuns was the first one in France and set the precedent for the other two that I've previously spoken about. Well, there you have it, guys. That is our list of the top 5 real demons who possessed the living. Please comment down below what you thought about this list, and if you or someone you've known have ever had an encounter where you think you might be possessed by a demon. I would love to hear that story. Please also hit the like and subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.